Good evening, students. So what was the last topic we were seeing? Can someone respond, please? So what was the last topic we were seeing?
Derivation of magnetic dipole moment.
Yes, derivation of magnetic dipole moment due to an electron, right?
Yes, sir.
If I'm not wrong, this is the derivation that we would have done. Derivation of magnetic dipole, I is equal to E by T. Is this the one we did?
Sir, are you sharing the screen?
The screen is not visible, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, 1 minute.
Now we can see, sir.
Okay. Yeah, last class I was discussing this thing, right? I is equal. This is the derivation we saw. Derivation of magnetic dipole moment of an electron, which is revolving in an atom, right? Now we will see the last chapter. We would have seen how a solenoid functions, right? So now we are going to see how a solenoid and a bar magnet are similar. Okay. So we know certain facts with respect to a bar magnet. What are they? So when you take a bar magnet, if the distance between the poles is L, then there is a magnetic field which is going to be from North Pole to the South Pole outside the magnet and South Pole to the North Pole inside the magnet. Right. So this is how they are going to occur. Now what we are going to see is, we will see how a solenoid is able to function exactly similar to a solenoid, to a bar magnet. That is what the next topic is. So write it down. Solenoid as an equivalent bar magnet. Okay, write down the heading. So if you take a solenoid in a three-dimensional space, it is going to look like a cylinder, right? So on the solenoid, let's say there are windings like this. So you're able to see the windings. So there will be windings in such a way that the current through each winding is taken to be I. Okay, have this in your mind. So current through each winding will be taken to be I. Oh, sorry guys, just a minute. Before I explain this concept, it is better I explain the Coulomb's law of magnetism. See, these topics actually, the Coulomb's law of magnetism and all those things are not given in textbook. Okay, but I will generally explain it because it is easy for you to understand how the other concepts work, how this concept is similar to the concept of electrostatics. Okay, so let me explain that part and then we will go to the solenoid as a bar magnet. I'm sorry, we'll start from here. Okay. See, what does Coulomb's law for electrostatics state? You have 2 point charges, Q1 and Q2, and let's say they are separated by distance R. Then mainly Coulomb's law speaks about what? The force of the electrostatic force of attraction or repulsion existing between them. So the electrostatic force of attraction or repulsion existing between them is given by the formula 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 divided by R square. Correct, Adam? So this is the formula. Now, how will you apply the same concept of Coulomb's law for magnetism? Right. So there is a similarity between electrostatics and magnetism, guys. You need to understand this fact first. I think I would have told you in the last class itself. Like I would have explained with this example. Like a north pole in the case of magnetism is similar to positive charge in the case of electrostatics. South pole in the case of magnetism is similar to negative charge in the case of electrostatics, right? So if a positive and a negative charges are separated by distance 2a, that is, if you have an electric dipole, then the electric dipole moment of that particular material is given by what value? Q multiplied with 2a. Am I right? In a similar way, when you have two poles, each pole of a magnet has a strength of value m. So which we call it as pole strength. Okay. If you know the pole strength of the magnets, and the distance between the poles is given as 2L, then there is something called as a magnetic dipole moment that will exist, and whose value is how much? Small m into 2L. Do you guys remember this? Guys, are you there or not? Am I audible?
Yes, that's in the topic.
Okay. So, in a similar way, what do you think is similar to charges in electrostatic and magnetism? So, wherever you have charge in electrostatics, in magnetism, what are the parameters with which you are going to replace it with? You replace it with pole strength. Right. Suppose you have two magnetic poles. What do you mean by magnetic poles? The North Pole and the South Pole, obviously. You have two magnetic poles and they have certain pole strengths associated with them. Okay. Let's say their pole strengths are small m1 and small m2. Then the magnetic force of attraction or repulsion that is existing between them is given by the value mu naught divided by 4 pi into m1 into m2 divided by r square. Okay. So 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught will always be replaced with mu naught by 4 pi. Q1 into Q2 will be replaced with m1 into m2, and r square is similar. Here also, it follows the inverse square law. Okay. Where m1 and m2 are generally called as the pole strengths, r is the distance between the poles, and mu naught is the permeability of free space. Clear, guys? Now, using this concept, what we will do is, we will calculate the magnetic field due to a magnetic dipole on axial line and equatorial line. Okay. So tell me, before we start this concept, tell me what is the electric field due to a charge. So first of all, how do you define the electric field due to a charge? E is given as the amount of electrostatic force divided by the discharge Q naught. Okay. In a similar way, if I have to define the magnetic field in terms of force, what is it called? Just now I told you. Right, magnetic field, how will you define? It is a magnetic force divided by, create a similarity, why are you people not even trying? Magnetic force divided by, what should be replaced for charge in the case of magnetic field? Guys, what is that you're supposed to replace with? Replace for charge in the case of magnetism. I already told you something. Did you guys make a note of it at least? Guys, this will be the last warning. If you guys are not going to respond, I'll just end the session and leave. Am I audible?
Yes.
Then what makes you not speak? What is stopping you guys from speaking? Just now I taught you something called as, see, all these things are not there in textbook and they are important for you to understand this chapter. Or else you land up mugging it up. If you want me to just teach the concept from textbook and go, I'll do it. I need not spend this much of energy, right? There is a fourth hour I'm speaking. Please understand, okay? I don't have energy to speak. I start my classes at 3 o'clock. Understand? What is that you replace with charge and magnetism?
Pole strength.
That's what I've been asking, no? FB divided by what will you write the place of charge?
Pole strength.
That's it. So magnetic force divided by the pole strength is what is going to give you the intensity of magnetic field in case of permanent magnets. Because we have another formula for electric field intensity in the previous chapter for electromagnetism. Who gave us that formula? There were two scientists together, they gave us some formula. No, what is it? Yeah, Biot-Savart law. Yes, Biot-Savart law is used to calculate the value of magnetic field due to a current carrying conductor at a given point. Whereas this formula is applicable for a permanent magnet. I hope you know what is the difference between both, right? So temporary magnet is the case of electromagnet, and here it is going to be permanent magnet, right? So FB divided by M. Now, I have another question. Listen. So here, Q naught stands for the magnitude of which charge?
Any charge.
Sorry, da?
So without the sign, any charge.
No, it is test charge. No.
Yes, sorry.
Q naught is nothing but test charge, and by default, test charge is always positive. In a similar way, here M stands for what? It will stand for the pole strength of a test magnet, for example. So why do we use a testing device? To understand the presence of those fields. Correct? So we are going to do it that way. Now the question is, what is the value of electric field due to a dipole on axial point? What is the electric field due to a dipole on axial point?
P by 3 epsilon naught.
How much? 2 kp, 2k divided by
R cube by R cube.
4 pi epsilon, 2 kp divided, 2p divided by 4 pi epsilon naught r cube. Correct? Similarly, what is going to be the electric field at the equatorial point? It will be P divided by 4 pi epsilon naught r cube, right?
R cube.
In a similar way, yes, in a similar way, assume that the electric dipole is replaced with a magnetic dipole. Then what do you think is going to be the magnetic field along the axial line of a dipole? Two times. Look at this expression. I told you 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught will be always replaced with 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught
sir.
will be replaced with
Constant.
Two
Okay.
epsilon
mu naught by 4 pi.
4 pi.
Oh, okay.
Mu naught by 4 pi is what you replace with. Okay. So 2 into P stands for electric dipole moment. So what will be the replacement here? It will be capital M, which is the magnetic dipole moment. 2 into, in the place of 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, can I write it as mu naught by 4 pi into, in the
Yes.
place of P, can I write it as capital M divided by R cube, where R
Yes.
is what? R is, yes, R is what? R, distance from where?
In the 2 poles.
Distance from the center to the point where you're trying to calculate the field. In a similar way, what will be the magnetic field at the equatorial point? You guys guess it.
So it's without the 2
One-
epsilon not M by
Charge in
4.
Epsilon naught M
There will
by
be no more
4 pi R cube.
There will be no epsilon naught more. That is not epsilon naught, it is mu naught.
Sorry, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
Mu
mu
naught
naught
M
by-
by 4 pi R cube.
Very good. So mu naught M divided by 4 pi R cube is going to be the magnetic field at which point? At the equatorial point. Okay. Now, we are going to see the derivation of it. Sometimes they ask the derivation also. Okay, at that point you should know. So how did we derive the electric field due to a dipole along the axial point?
We found out the electric fields separately and we added.
Added them using the vector addition, correct?
Vector.
In a similar way, you will do the magnetic for the magnetic dipole moment also. We'll do doing the same thing. Let's see how to do it. I'm just looking for some space. Okay. So if you take a bar magnet, then a bar magnet will, let's say it has a length of 12. Okay. And this bar magnet should be very small in the sense it should be small compared to the distance where you're trying to calculate the field. So if I take this point as O and if I take this point as P, then let me take this as the North Pole and this as the South Pole. Okay. At P, what should happen is it is as if the North Pole of pole strength M is placed here. Okay. Then from the center to the point P, if I take this distance to be R, what is the magnetic field due to the first pole at point P? It will be mu naught divided by 4 pi into pole strength of whom?
M.
Pole strength. Yes, pole strength here, if I call it as M1, actually what we will do, generally the pole strength of a given magnet will be the same for both the poles. If I take both to be M1 and M1 for instance, or I'll do one thing, I'll take this as M and this as M, and this I will take it as m1. Okay, so mu naught m divided by, how much will be the answer? R square.
Square.
See, instead of 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r square, I wrote mu naught by 4 into m by r square. Similarly, B2p will be mu naught by 4 pi into m divided by r square. Now observe, guys, the magnetic field due to the north pole, because see, at point P, it is as if there is a north pole placed. See, though there is a monopole option not available for magnet, it is similar to keeping a positive charge at the place, but positive charge is nothing but a north pole, right? So B1P will be in the direction of I cap, and B2P will be in the direction of minus I cap. So what is going to be the net magnetic field, guys?
B1p minus B2p.
Okay, wait, I made a small mistake. This distance is R. This distance will be R minus L. And this distance will be R plus L. So B1P divided by R plus L the whole square. And here it will be R minus L the whole square. Okay, so it will be mu naught M divided by 4 pi into 1 by R plus L the whole square minus 1 by R minus L the whole square. So how much will be the answer? Mu naught M divided by 4 pi into R minus L the whole square minus R plus L the whole square, the whole divided by R square minus L square the whole square. So this will give us mu naught M divided by 4 pi into A minus B the whole square minus A plus B the whole square. A square minus B square.
Yes.
Sorry, A minus B the whole square minus A plus B the whole square is 4AB. So 4RL divided by R square minus L square the whole square can be written as R square the whole square. Because we know that R is very much greater than L. I already told this to you. So what will be the answer, guys? Mu naught M into 4RL divided by 4 pi R power 4. This and this will get cancelled. So this 4 I can write it as 2 into 2. So mu naught 2 times mu naught into 2m into L divided by 4 pi R cube is equal to what? 2 times mu naught into, what is 2m into L? It is capital M, that is the magnetic dipole moment, divided by 4 pi R cube. Did you understand how it came?
Yes, sir.
Please write it down. Let me know once you're done.
Yes, sir.
Noted, sir.
So similarly, when you calculate it for equatorial plane, you need to do it in the same way like how we did for electrostatics. But this is the point I wanted to convey. So with respect to a small bar magnet, the magnetic field along the axial point is given as 2 times mu naught into capital M divided by 4 pi R cube. Right. So with the help of this particular expression, we are going to prove that solenoid behaves similar to a small bar magnet. Mark it as important. Okay. So coming back to the derivation. So when you look at a solenoid, the core of the solenoid is going to look in the shape of a cylinder. So with respect to a solenoid, there are certain parts that you need to make a note of. It's something like this. Okay, I'll mark it here. This is called as the axis of solenoid. So on the solenoid, there is a current carrying conductor which is connected in this way. There is a current carrying conductor connected in this way, and our job is to calculate the magnetic field due to this kind of a dipole. There is a solenoid at any point P on the axis of it. Okay. So for that, what we are going to do is listen to this very carefully. Okay. There is any doubt, get it clarified. So we will try to break it into 4 quadrants such that the center of the solenoid is taken as O, and you draw a line through that O perpendicular to this vertical axis. Then this is called as the axis of the given dipole. So this line is the axis of solenoid. Okay, and let the length of the solenoid be 2L. And from with respect to point O, let's say the solenoid is broken into 2 equal parts of length L and L. Okay, and let the radius of the solenoid be A, and the distance from the center to the point where the field is to be calculated is R. Any doubt till this step? Is everything clear? Is there any
Yes.
doubt?
Yes,
No.
sir.
No, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Now what we will do is, let's say A is the radius of the solenoid, 2L is the length of the solenoid with the center O. And if you take small n as the number of turns per unit length and I as the current passing through the solenoid, then what we can do is, we can take OP as R. Next, we will consider a small element of thickness dx of the solenoid at a distance x from the center. So at a distance x from the center, let us consider a small element of thickness dx. Now tell me guys, what will be the number of turns in thickness dx? Will it not be equal to number of turns per unit length into thickness? So what are the number of turns per unit length? It is small n into how much is the thickness of it? It is dx. I hope you understood this.
Yes, sir.
So these are the number of turns that are present in this blue color shaded portion. Okay. Now, if I take that small portion as a circular ring, then due to a circular ring, the magnetic field on the axis of it is given by, do you guys remember this formula? Mu naught NIA square divided by 2 into A square plus X square, the whole power 3 by 2. I told you in the previous chapter that this is important. This is the magnetic field due to a circular current carrying ring on the axis of it. Okay. Now listen. Mu naught is how much? Sorry, you need not apply any formula. Mu naught by 2 into A square plus, what is the value of X, guys? X is the distance from this current carrying element to this point P. Correct? How much is that?
R.
Correct. R. Is it R? From R, something is gone. What is it? From R,
R
something is
minus
gone.
6.
Yes, it is R minus 6. a square plus r minus x the whole square, the whole power 3 by 2. Okay. In the place of capital N, what can I write? Can I write it as small n into dx? I is I only, a is a only. Did you make a note of the step?
Yes, sir.
So this is the value of dB, but we need to find the value of the total magnetic field. So total magnetic field will be integral of mu naught n I a square into dx divided by 2 into, remember I told you r is very much greater than L, which implies r is very much greater than x also, because x is a part of L. When r is greater than L itself, r will definitely be greater than x also. Then r minus x the whole square can be approximated to r square itself. Okay. Now, if I observe this expression, I need to find out what is the variable. We are integrating with respect to dx. So x is a variable which is lying along the length of this particular device. So what we need to do is you need to take the value of dx as minus L2 plus L. Okay. So mu naught n I a square divided by 2 into a square plus r square the whole power 3 by 2 into dl from minus L to L will give you the answer dx. Okay. So this will be mu naught n I a square divided by 2 into a square plus r square the whole power 3 by 2 into integral of dx will be 2 times L. Okay. Now observe one thing, guys. Now observe one thing. So I'm hoping that everybody is writing step by step. I hope you guys are writing with me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the value of B that you're going to get here is mu naught n. This mu naught into, can I say small n into 2L is capital N? I is I only. In the place of a square, I will write pi a square and compensate it with a pi in the denominator. Accepted? Now, what is this pi a square, guys? What is this pi a square called as?
Area of circles.
Area, right? So, n multiplied with I multiplied with area will give us what? N multiplied with I multiplied with area will give us what? It will give us the magnetic dipole moment mu naught m divided by 2 pi into a square plus r square can be approximated to r square the whole power 3 by 2. So how much will be the answer? Mu naught m divided by 2 pi r cube. What is this expression, guys? What is this expression?
Equatorial.
Equatorial. Huh?
No, sir.
No, not equatorial. Just multiply with 2 in the numerator and 2 in the denominator. 2 mu naught m divided by 4 pi r cube. This is the magnetic field due to a permanent magnet along its, due to a bar magnet along the axial point, right? So, but
Yes,
we got this expression from the solenoid. And that is the reason why we say that a solenoid is equivalent to a bar magnet. Okay, please make a note of this point.
Noted, sir.
Okay. The next concept is how to calculate the torque acting on a magnetic dipole. So last chapter we would have discussed about the torque acting on a current carrying coil. What is the value of torque acting on a current carrying coil? If you don't remember, go check your notes and tell me. Find it out somehow and tell me. What is the answer guys? Torque acting on a current carrying coil.
Sir,
I wrote it already. NIBA sin theta. Based on this only, we understood the concept of galvanometer and all. NIBA sin theta. This Ni into A is what is called as the magnetic dipole moment, and it is given as MB sin theta. Correct? So, in a similar way, instead of placing a current carrying coil in external magnetic field, if you place a permanent magnet in external magnetic field also, the torque is going to be MB sin theta only, where theta is the angle between the dipole axis and the magnetic field. Next. Potential energy of a magnetic dipole in uniform magnetic field. So what was the formula for potential energy of an electric dipole in external electric field?
Minus P dot E.
Minus P dot P vector dot E vector, or minus PE cos theta. Right? It is minus PE cos theta. In a similar way, if you calculate the potential energy of a magnet or of a magnetic dipole in external magnetic field, you will get the answer as minus M into B cos theta, where M is what? M is the magnetic dipole moment and B is the magnetic field intensity. And theta obviously is the angle between the magnetic dipole moment and the magnetic field. Now what we are going to do is, we are going to see the derivation. Let's say there is a uniform magnetic field existing in which I have placed a bar magnet like this. Okay. So bar magnets poles have pole strength. Let's say it has a pole strength M here. It also has a pole strength M here. And this is going to be the axis of the particular magnetic dipole. Right. Now, what is going to be the force experienced by this magnetic dipole due to the external magnetic field? It will experience a force of value MB in the right direction. And here it will experience a force of value MB in the leftward direction. Okay. And let's say this length is L and this length is L. If you drop a perpendicular, then this distance will be L sine theta. And this distance will also be L sine theta. Okay. Now, what is going to be the net force? See, there is a force experience in the rightward direction. There is the force experience in the leftward direction. So what is going to be the net value of force? What is going to be the net force acting on this object? It will be MB plus minus MB. So when you place a bar magnet in a uniform magnetic field, it does not experience any force. But what about the torque experienced by the first surface? Torque is equal to force into perpendicular distance. So what is the force? It is MB into perpendicular distance is L sine theta. Right. In a similar way, and it will act into the plane minus K cap. Okay. Similarly, torque experienced by the second particle will be force into perpendicular distance, and this is also going to act in the direction of minus K cap. So what is going to be the net torque that is acting on the particle? It will be MB into 2L sine theta, which is going to act in the direction of minus K cap. So what is small m into 2L? That is capital M, and B is B only into sine theta. So capital MB sine theta is what is the torque experienced by whom? By a magnetic dipole placed in external magnetic field. Make a note of this.
Noted, sir.
Okay. Now, next is
Sir, 1 minute, can you scroll up?
sure. Let me know once you're done.
Yeah, done, sir.
Okay. So potential energy of dipole when uniform magnetic field. Okay, now we are going to see the potential energy of a dipole in uniform magnetic field. You have a north pole and south pole. Okay. So whenever you need to calculate potential energy, I would have told this many times. Wherever you want to calculate a parameter called energy, what are we supposed to do indirectly? Find. You would have learned in the first chapter, second chapter also. How did we calculate the potential energy of an electric dipole in external electric field? You will calculate the small amount of work done.
Work done.
So small amount of work done is equal to tau into d theta. And work done is nothing but mb sine theta into d theta. That is dw. So w will be integral of mb sine theta d theta. Okay. So here theta will vary from theta 1 to theta 2. If I take it like this w will be equal to mb into minus cos theta from theta 1 to theta 2. It is minus mb cos theta 2 minus cos theta 1. This is going to be the answer. In short form, you can write as minus m vector dot b vector. Okay, minus m vector dot b vector. Okay. The last concept for the day is Gauss law in magnetism. So wherever you see Gauss law, so for example, can you guys state what is the Gauss law in electrostatics? What is Gauss law in electrostatics? The net electric
Charge.
net electric charge,
Field, sir.
Net elect. I mean, the
not field.
charge inside a Gaussian surface. I was about to say.
What is this?
Electric field.
At least now tell it right. It is a net electric flux. The net electric flux through a closed surface will be equal to 1 by epsilon naught times the charge enclosed by the Gaussian surface, right? In a similar way, here, Gauss law in magnetism is stated like this. The surface integral of magnetic field over any closed or open surface is always 0. Means, unlike the Gauss law in the case of electrostatics, when you try to apply the Gauss law in the case of magnetism, the answer for the total flux through any closed surface will be 0 because the answer is very simple. When I talk about an electric field line, suppose I have an electric dipole, the electric field lines emanate from the positive surface and they get ended with the negative surface. Correct? They start from the positive surface and they end with the negative charge. Whereas in the case of magnetism, what will happen is they start from North Pole and go to the South Pole outside the magnet, whereas inside they go from South to North. Means magnetic field lines will always form a closed loop. Correct? Magnetic field lines will always form a closed loop, as a result of which, if you try to calculate the flux, you take the Gaussian surface anywhere, you can easily say that the number of field lines leaving the surface will be equal to the number of field lines entering back into the surface. As a result of which, you try to calculate the net flux, okay, the net magnetic flux over any closed loop, the answer comes out to be 0. So this law tells that the net magnetic flux through any surface is always 0. Okay. So this is the first part of the chapter. Basically, this chapter, magnetism and its matter, right? So magnetism, the first part, we will be discussing about the permanent magnetism. In the second part, we will discuss about something called as Earth's magnetism. And then the third part, we will discuss about the magnetic properties of materials. So we will see what are all the magnetic properties associated with a given material. Based on that, we will be classifying the devices into paramagnetic, diamagnetic, and ferromagnetic substances. Okay, so that is the third part. So we have with Gauss law for magnetism, we have completed the first part. Okay, the next class we'll be seeing the third part, then we'll come to the second part, because third part is slightly tedious. For you to understand that, you guys need to revise it continuously. One thing I am able to see is nobody is even touching your book. Even a simple Gauss law, you guys are making so much mistake. Thinking of electric field, when you're not able to recollect electric flux, I don't know what to do. Let me see. So that's it. That's it for today's class. Prepare well and come for tomorrow's class. I want the class to be responsive. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.